The Outer Worlds 2 released at the end of October of this year for both PC through Steam and the Xbox app, and both the Xbox and PlayStation console. It retails for $70 US, but it's also a day one release on Game Pass. It took me a little over 30 hours to beat while doing most of the side missions, companion quests, and the main storyline. So, is the Outer Worlds 2 worth playing on console? This review is going to answer that question.
The Earth Directorate is on your side. Whether against corrupt corporations, tyrannical governments, or corrupt corporations in league with tyrannical governments, the Earth Directorate is here to fight for the rights of all colonists.
Let's start the review, as we always do, by discussing the graphics and technical performance of The Outer Worlds 2 on console. The game does have some significant FPS drops when exploring the worlds, especially when there's a lot of action happening in forested or grassy areas. It usually only lasted for under a minute, but it was enough that it brought down the experience of exploration. Thankfully, a lot of the game does take place in smaller spaces where this isn't a problem, so I could get a stable 60 FPS on performance mode for the majority of my playthrough. But there are a lot of bugs and glitches. While they aren't Fallout levels of bad, there were multiple times where enemies got stuck on objects or a quest-dependent object wasn't able to be interacted with. There was even a quest that couldn't be completed because the NPC I was required to talk to didn't acknowledge the quest, meaning I couldn't turn it in to get rewarded. None of it was truly game-breaking, and most could be fixed with a restart, but if you're looking for a perfectly polished experience, The Outer Worlds 2 is a number of patches away from that state. Moving on to graphics, I feel there were a lot of compromises made in the quality of the environment to get the game running smoothly at 60 FPS. Sometimes the game can look incredible with good lighting and stunning environments, but there are other times you can tell that whatever dial controls the graphics was turned way down to prevent my console from exploding. It's particularly bad in the first world of Eden, a heavily forested farm world. When it was daytime, things would just look plain bad at times. Again, this isn't a game-breaking fact, just something to be aware of. The game is obviously going to look much better on PC, but it's not awful on console, just not as good.
We have recently discovered that the drives are somehow responsible for the dangerous rift anomalies, the tears in the fabric of space itself. And without skip drives, interstellar travel is impossible. No imported snacks, no Aether Wave cereals, no survival for the colonies.
Alright, let's discuss the story of Outer Worlds 2. I played the first game on release, and since that time, whatever memories I had of it have long since been driven from my mind by hundreds of other games. I kept getting the story of Outer Worlds 1 mixed up with Starfield, especially since both games are so similar. But here's a quick, spoiler-free rundown of the narrative. The Outer Worlds 2 is set in a universe where big corporations rule everything, especially the outer space colonies. Earth still exists, but it's pretty helpless to do anything about these corporations. On top of that, you have dictatorships and all manners of different government types building colonies all over the galaxy. This can all take place because of the skip drive, which is how humanity travels faster than light in this world. You play as a member of the Earth Directorate, basically the space police or a paramilitary force of Earth that goes to these colonies and keeps the corporations in check or removes the worst governments. Obviously, they're limited in what they can do because of the distances involved. The game starts with you investigating the Protectorate. This is a group responsible for building skip drives in the first place. No one knows how this technology works, and taking a skip drive apart causes it to explode. This means the Protectorate are rich beyond belief and basically untouchable. What they've discovered is the skip drives have an unfortunate side effect of causing rifts to form. These rifts are incredibly dangerous and directly tied to the use of the skip drive. Use it enough, and they form rifts big enough to destroy worlds. You're sent to figure out how to stop these rifts. That's the basic premise of the game. The game has you gathering companions, doing quests for them to improve their abilities and equipment, while pursuing the goal of investigating the drives and the rifts associated with them. The game has three main factions: the Protectorate, who run the planets of the system you're in; Auntie's Choice, which is a big corporation that's seeking to commercially exploit the system; and the Order, who are basically math nerds. In a twist, none of these groups are truly good, nor are they truly evil. They're just versions of real-world governments and corporations dialed up to 11. The Protectorate, for example, are authoritarian to the extreme with a cult-like obedience to their supreme leader. Anti's choice is capitalism taken to its limit, with everything costing money and their goal being the pursuit of profit over anything else. Then there are the Order, who are looking for the truth of the universe in math and logic while ignoring morality and the consequences to their humanity. You get to pick who you want to work with in Outer Worlds 2, and while there are no right choices, there are no wrong choices either. It's all just shades of gray. I don't want to go too deep in the story because of spoilers, but overall, it's pretty good. There are betrayals and twists, crazy science and technologies, along with memorable companions. They may not be on the level of companions from, say, Mass Effect, but they're all distinct enough to stand out. Each one of them come from different factions, giving you additional insight into them that you might not normally have. As for your character, just like in Fallout, you can be as morally upright or completely unhinged as you want to be, with all the consequences in between.
Lord, damn, what was that? There ain't been active fighting here in I don't even know how long. We got bases down there. If one of them got hit, then that strike will be the first of many.
Okay, let's dive into the gameplay of The Outer Worlds 2. It's a first-person shooter with some RPG elements. I think we should start with the combat, and I have to say that The Outer Worlds 2 is much better as a shooter than in the Fallout series. The guns feel more satisfying, coming in a wide variety of types. There are even melee weapons which are super powerful in comparison to guns, making them really viable if you can tank damage in order to reach your enemies. It's not as good as, say, Call of Duty, but I found the combat fun and engaging enough to keep me happy throughout my playthrough. But again, it's not perfect. The weapons have limited RPG aspects to them, with mods that you can craft or come already attached to the item. There are also damage numbers for each, along with rarities, but they don't really level with your character. This means there isn't an incentive to swap out weapons or armor throughout the game. You could, theoretically, use the same weapon throughout the game without any problem. In fact, my favorite guns and melee weapons came from the very first world, and I used them for most of the game. I had an entire inventory full of unique weapons, but I really only used a half dozen at most, depending on if I ran out of ammo for them. This lack of a leveling system in your items means that you aren't really prevented from exploring certain areas or forced to constantly drop or sell guns and armor as you progress. But like I said, it also means that new weapons and armor are kinda useless unless you get a unique weapon you like. It does feel sort of like a missed opportunity, and while I didn't want it to be like a Borderlands game where you're constantly switching to new weapons, I would have appreciated an incentive to try new things. I got a hammer in my first 10 hours of playthrough that shoots shotgun shells when you hit somebody with it, and that thing destroyed enemies right up to the very last boss. One thing that The Outer Worlds 2 does is that it's miles better than Fallout in its inventory system. It's not perfect, with limited weapon slots that are only open up with mods on your equipment, but at least it's easy to navigate. As for the mods and the crafting system itself, it's there, but you don't really have to engage with it if you don't want to. Mods provide benefits to weapons and armor, but they aren't game-breaking, and most of the equipment comes with mods already attached, so at most you may change the ammo type so that it shoots, say, electric bullets instead of regular bullets. Again, it's a bit of a missed opportunity, and I felt like they included crafting and mods in the game as it's supposed to be there, rather than making crafting unique to itself.
So remember, if you or your neighbor's government has turned tyrannical or sold themselves out to greedy corporate interests, just commandeer a skip drone and send the Earth Directorate an SOS, and we will respond immediately.
Please allow 6 months to 10 years, depending on your proximity to the nearest Earth Directorate base and any unforeseen encounters.
Alright, let's go into the pros and cons of The Outer Worlds 2. For the pros, the story's pretty good, with twists and turns, hidden secrets to discover, and a ton of interesting side quests to complete. The combat was fun and satisfying, especially bonking people with a hammer that shoots shotgun shells. There are moments where the game looks truly stunning even on console. But unfortunately, there are some cons. There are some compromises in graphics to have it run mostly stable on console. Still, there are significant FPS drops and other bugs. The crafting system and the weapon mods are a missed opportunity in my opinion. I didn't feel there was any real incentive to switch out weapons and armor in the game. And that's it for another review. With The Outer Worlds 2 clocking in at over 30 hours to complete the main storyline and the majority of the side quests, along with a lot of locations to visit and explore, is this game worth playing on console? I would say yes, it is. I really enjoyed my time with Outer Worlds 2. Whether you pay $70 US or you get it for free through Game Pass, I would recommend anyone looking for a fun FPS with an engaging story to check out The Outer Worlds 2. I'm the Casual Console Gamer on YouTube, and I'll see you all in the next review.